Not bad. I don't think there's anybody here yet.
Not yet.
Oh, it says, look at that.
We're here.
We're live. Yeah, we're here.
Somebody.
We'll watch them roll in. It's like quite nice outside here. Maybe everybody's catching some sun.
We've got a heat wave. Which
Have you?
means, like, in Fahrenheit, it's like 90. So it's not exactly a deadly heat wave. But for people in Michigan, it's like they, if it's anything above, 50, 60 degrees, they complain.
What's 90 in real money?
What is
25 maybe? No, 30. I don't know.
90 in Celsius is I typed in 90 Celsius. It was like 194. My God, that's super hot.
Hey, we're up to 51 folk. Hello, folks. Great to see you. Thanks for coming along.
32 in real temperature.
32. That it never gets to 32 in Edinburgh.
Oh no.
I don't think so. I mean, I might be wrong. There might have been like a heat wave once upon a time when we got you. But to be honest with you, I'm happy with like 25, 26. That does me. I think it's only about 16, 17 here today. So it's not that warm, which whatever that is, 60 odd sort of thing. So
good morning, everybody. Why don't you chat where you're calling in from? And what temperature is it there? And do you measure it in real money or fake money?
Let's talk about the weather. The British apparently love it. Winds my wife up. For those who don't know, my wife is American, from South Dakota, and it winds her up that we talk about the weather so much. But yeah, it's a good conversation, like an introduction thing. Paul Hughes, Dan, Graham, Darren Dickinson, Natalie, Robert Bradford.
Mike Mazzoni's here. Get out of here. Mike Mazzoni, one of my idols in behavioral psychology.
No way.
Yeah.
95 in Denver with him.
Yeah, but it's dry. It's a dry heat there. That's
Natalie's in Utah. Utah is hot, isn't it? There's a group they're not so much prevalent now, but a group called Utah Saints in Britain. Very indie kind of rock. Mike Court in Calgary, -17. Is that -17, Mike, or is that just a dash? It could be -17.
It's -17 Fahrenheit there. I mean, who knows?
Back of the Rockies, anything can happen. Lawrence Ling, Ponteland, 15 degrees. Natalie, 98.
Quiet's here. Look at that. And Angie's here. Man, great. I haven't seen these folks in forever.
You're getting nervous now. They've come to see if they can get any happiness tips from you, John.
Jesse used to watch my son, and he is now 11. And now she's a super famous behavior analyst. Look at that. And
Toronto
Paul Lambie,
feels like
great artist, is
feels
also
like 35. See, Canadians do it right, don't they? They got centigrade.
Do they? Yeah, they do. They do. Yeah, I know. We're weirdos, man.
Yeah, man.
We're weirdos.
Okay. Should we crack on?
Yeah, let's get it.
Just expectations. John and I are going to try and do this within an hour. I don't think we've been successful for an hour yet, so it might be an hour and 10 minutes. But we're going to try and do for an hour. But if we're having so much fun because this is a happiness webinar, then I guess you can't hold that against us. But yeah, we'll see. We've got some. We had to cut a fair bit actually because there's so much to tell you about happiness. For some of you, you might think, well, why are these guys actually talking about happiness? Are they not like behavioral scientists usually talking about leadership and health and safety? And well, one reason was John and I were like, what we're going to do the next webinar about, because we enjoyed the other ones so much. The other ones were about COVID. So kind of like, what do you do after COVID? Well, let's talk about something a bit happier was another reason to do this one. But also behaviors. It's all, everything, man, is about behaviors. It's about the actions that we do. And there's still in many company and household and in wherever you are, there's this disconnect with not understanding how powerful our actions are in how they make us feel, and how they make us, and how healthy they make us or unhealthy and also then the connection with the environment. So it's there's lots that behavioral science can tell us about happiness, but we're going to talk about some of the research in the science of happiness, and then link that back into also some behavioral science stuff as well. Okay, so that's the reason. So today,
Can I add something to that real quick? Because I've always got something to add, as you guys all know. So I think I just like to add that, you know, the way things are going these days, there's a lot in the news that is depressing, and a lot that is bringing us down. And our kids are depressed because they don't have social contact, and we're getting depressed. And the more we listen to the news, the worse it is. And it seems like a downward spiral. And I really don't think that that's reality. And so I think that's why I was really interested in doing this webinar on happiness. We all have some control over this. We're not merely victims of what's being put out in the news and stuff like that. So that's my interest in this. I mean, there are lots of things that we can do to exert some control over our environment and our happiness in our lives. And so that's why we wanted to talk about this. We want to share it with you guys because we love you guys and we want to help you too. So go ahead, Bob.
Thanks, John. Just to let you know, my daughter is on here as well, so I can't swear. So thanks, Hannah, for finally joining one of my webinars. Hey! Right. So the second question here, guys, is just in the chat box. Can you type in some examples of things that make you happy? So what kind of things that make you happy? And this again, we're going to cover some interesting points here because there's several definitions of what happiness is. And a lot of, for me, actually, some of the interesting stuff that I found out was around the definition, and then having my own, I guess, definition of that. Beer, was that playing golf? Wait, beer, no, yeah, sunrise, coffee, reading, walking in the woods.
Wait, beer. Wait, you're right, beer.
My dog being outside, hearing other people, good news, jokes, art, singing. Yeah, lovely, brilliant, yeah.
Yeah, great.
Drinking IPA, eh, Bob? You get in there.
Nice. Riding a bike down the hill with the wind behind me. I like that. Yeah.
Animals, dogs.
Better than uphill with the wind in your face. Drinking a good IPA. I've had a couple of those with Bob.
Iron Maiden, Judas Priest.
Yes.
Kevin
Bale. Yeah.
The Beach and Dogs, yeah. Happy Family.
Oh, that's amazing.
Watching David O'Hara. What do you mean? As in women's football, or?
What's that? I don't know what that is. Zeppelin. Wait, that's awesome. Yeah, I didn't know it was going to be that kind of webinar. I'm getting to pull out my rocker gear here.
And do you know what? Actually, I mean, I didn't think of this when we thought about asking this question, but hold on to some of these guys because we'll talk about these points later on. Perhaps this is why John actually thought about this, but I didn't until now. This is quite important. Actually, it's not just a case of you listing stuff for us to make us happy. That's brilliant. Thank you very much. Right. So very, very quickly, because I'm sure most of you know now, because that's why you're here. Well, as in you're here because you saw our thing, so you know who we are. But I'm Bob. Run Sodac. We're based up in Edinburgh in Scotland. We're a behavioural design agency using behavioural science to help people improve stuff. John?
I am John Austin. I've been studying behavioral science for 30 years, and really it's applied behavior analysis, but I'm a pragmatist, so I use whatever works, and I love to learn new things about what works to learn, to create better environments for humans. So I help leaders in business, been around the world, 12 countries at least, thousands of leaders, using behavioral science and what we know about people to create more effective work environments. And that's really my focus. It can be safety, but really could be any results.
Fantastic. Thanks, John. Okay, so What is happiness? You guys have said what you think it is. There are, it wouldn't surprise you. There are some definitions of happiness, and we've got a few of those for you. So this is one that I'll quickly talk about. So I've been reading a book. Actually, it was Paul Lambie told me about this book, and it's called Solve for Happy. And it's by a guy called Mo Gawdat. And there's going to be a resource link sheet that we'll send out to you guys after this as well. So we've got a link to some talks that he did and his book as well. And he worked at Google X, and he took a sabbatical to write his book. And the inspiration actually was quite sad. He lost his son at the age of 21. John, I'm just going to switch my video off there so we can see the. If you can do the same, just so we can get that other bit of the equation there. This is the happiness equation according to Mo Gawdat, and he's saying that happiness is equal to or greater than the difference between your perception of the events in your life and your expectations about how life should behave. Okay. And so that's the way he looks at it, and he's written this book. And I definitely encourage you to get a copy or listen to it. It's a really good book, and his story is great as well. But some really great practical tips in there about it as well. He also talks about every moment you have felt happy, you have felt that life has been going your way, regardless of how realistic your expectation of life is. Okay, so that's quite interesting. That then says something about the way you're expecting life to be compared to actually how it is, rather than actually how life is, right? So therefore, that means that that's created. Therefore, we can do something about it. John, you've got something to add here from a slightly different take on this, haven't you?
Yeah. So there's a science of happiness, and it's known as positive psychology. And probably the father of the field is a guy named Martin Seligman. And, some of the findings in this field, a number of researchers have kind of developed over the last 15 or 20 years in positive psychology. And there's some really interesting findings there that I just want to share with you, like at a high level. So like they've studied what it takes to create happiness, and I guess Seligman would say happiness is the science of happiness is the study of what makes people flourish. So let me turn my video back on. Sorry. And so, at a high level, our happiness is a result of complex interactions between genes and heredity, behaviors, and situations. Yeah. So like genes, they've found contribute about 50% of the variance in our happiness. Yeah. So like we have a bit of a happiness set point, sort of like we have a weight set point. So there's some evidence of that. But behaviors and our actions account for about 40% of our happiness. And then what's going on in our lives right now, and the situations account for about 10% at any specific moment in time. And so even though we have kind of maybe a genetic set point for happiness, we do have the ability to offset it for, maybe not permanently, but for extended periods of time. So you have the power to take control of your happiness by choosing your thoughts, behaviors, and actions. And if you want to learn more about, I'll be talking more about positive psychology during this, but if you want to learn more about it, I'm putting in a really cool, what I think is a really cool infographic on positive psychology that really tells a great story about a lot of the research and stuff like that. Like just reading the one infographic will get you a pretty far way in understanding a lot of the key findings in the field.
Yeah, it is really interesting, and that factor that we can do something about it, that it's not set, is the really interesting thing. And like many things that we're now finding, it's a lot of this is tied to context. So we're not these entities that live in isolation of everything else. We're fully connected to everything that's around us, and that means that a lot of the things that we feel and experience aren't simply because of who we are. They're because of everything that happens around us as well. And those are the things then that we can actually start to manipulate and change in order to change then how we feel. So I found this quote from Mo Gawdat as well, and I think this is quite nice. And happiness in the modern world is surrounded by myths. Much of our understanding of what happiness is and where to find it is distorted. When you know what you are looking for, the quest becomes easy. It may take time to unlearn old habits, but as long as you stick to the path, you'll get there. And this is something else that we'll talk about as well, is a lot of this stuff is practices that you can then do that will compound on themselves and will build. But it's a journey, right? So happiness isn't just like some destination. It's a journey that you then can choose to go on or not. And like many of them, like getting healthier and fitter and things like that, it takes a bit of effort. So that again is where the behavioral science can help, and creating environments then support these behaviors that are going to help you to continue with these behaviors.
Hey, Bob, you want to run a couple of polling questions real quick?
Oh, yes, please.
If I do that?
Yep.
Okay, so hopefully you guys see this poll. Go ahead and answer. When you, yeah, there you go. It'll changes the results as the data come in. So go ahead. I'll just give you a minute on that. Right now so the question is, I already know quite a bit about happiness research, and what we're seeing is 70% or so are saying no, and 23% are saying so. Only 5% or so are saying yes. So that's fantastic. I mean, because we've got so many great resources to share with you guys that Bob and I both love and are attracted to. And we think because you like a lot of what we do already and the way we think, I suspect that you're also going to like these resources. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I mean,
one other question, but I don't know how to get to it. Bob, do you?
I think you have to finish that one.
I think it's gone.
Hang on.
I want to run it manually, and so we won't call out any names or anything like that. But if you're willing, maybe think about how you're feeling right now, today. It changes like minute to minute, right, and day to day. But think about how you're feeling right now, and rate it from 1 to 5, where 1 is awful and 5 is amazing. And I won't give you all the behavioral descriptors in between, but like maybe put it into the chat if you're willing. Are you a 1 or a 5 or a 2, 4, 3? What are you? And let's just kind of see what the range is that we get from people. I also see a couple of questions that have come in.
Can you repeat the question there, John, please? What was the actual question there?
So rate how you're feeling right now, 1 to 5.
Right now.
Right now. So 1 is awful, 5 is great or amazing. It looks like we've got quite a range here. 4, 3, 3, 2, 3, 3, 4, mostly in the higher ranges, but there are some in the middle and lower. Oh no, we got a 0. Well, if we can help with that. Yeah, so okay, great. Thank you for playing there, guys. And I do see some coming through that are private, and that's okay. You could chat them privately if you want.
Yeah, and well done for figuring out how to do that, because I don't know how to do that. 2 to 3. That's awesome, guys.
Okay, Bob, do you want to take a crack at this question? I'm not sure I know the answer to this. What's the difference between happiness, excitement, and satisfaction?
Thanks for priming me for that one, John.
Well, we can come back to it. Let's let it percolate a little bit and see if we have a good answer to it.
Oh, so sorry, that was from one of the guys. It wasn't from you.
Yes, it's from Manish.
Say it again. I'll give it a lot more credence now. It wasn't from you.
I marked it in the chat too. So it's what's the difference between happiness, excitement, and satisfaction?
Okay, well, right. I think we'll answer that as we go through, actually. I'm pretty sure we will. Right, so let me get to share the slides again with you.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. If you guys have additional questions, please do chat them.
And I think in relation to the to that question, this is I kind of alluded to this at the start. From my I guess research on the happiness and taking part in some things, I've learned that it isn't what I thought it was. Therefore, I've redefined my version of happiness, which has made me more happy. Ironically, I think, and there's some slides that we'll definitely get onto which talks about that. The other things we're going to try and cover today, we're going to talk about time. We're going to talk about meditation and mindfulness, gratitude and giving. We're going to talk about the connection and the power of connection. Practicing though the massive, all these. I guess you could group those first four into things to practice, and also try and link this to a bit of happiness at work as well, and then roll up. So they're the main things that we're going to talk about. And these main things here are actually from the scientific research. There's other stuff as well that we can possibly cover in this short time, but these are the main things that we thought worth sharing with you that are probably the easiest to implement. We definitely all have the ability to implement these things to improve our lives. So time is the first one that we're going to speak about. Find this quote from Dr. Laurie Santos. I think it was John that first introduced me, not physically to Dr. Laurie Santos, but to the Happiness Lab. And I've since heard her on this podcast, which we'll send you a link out to as well, and on another podcast with an interview with Sam Harris, which we'll send you a link to that because it's very helpful as well. But this quote I thought was good. Happy people are ones that prioritize time, focusing on their signature strengths, those kinds of things you love in the world. They're the things that give you flow, that you love so much and that you really present in the moment. And John, I think you mentioned flow before very briefly. But flow, if you haven't heard of it as well, is Martin Seligman and also what is it, John? Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. That's it. Yes. His work as well into flow, and the link to happiness in there. But John, tell us about time.
By the way, if you do want some resources on flow, I've got something that I'll publish a little bit later. Reading their book, Seligman and Csikszentmihalyi, is fantastic, but it's could be used as a weapon. It's heavy enough, and the words are heavy enough as well. So, that is not for the faint of heart. It's probably not for the, and if you don't want scientific, very heavy stuff, there are other resources. One of them is called Flow Genomics Project, or the Flow Genome Project, and I'll publish their website for you guys so you have easy access to it a little bit later where you can read more. And happy to talk more about flow. But in the area of time, I really thought this was an important one because most of the people that I've worked with across industries over the last 30 years struggle with this one. And, it's it's an odd thing because, most of us think, well, I'm an accomplished professional. Why would I go to a time management course? So time management seems to belittle the problem. I really don't think that captures it. So I wanted to tell you a story here about some research in the area first to kind of get us started on this thought of time and the feeling of having not enough time. There was a study that was published in 1973 by Darley and Batson. And it's a famous study at this point now, so famous that they even discussed it in the Happiness Lab. But we've been telling this story in our courses for years now. And it's so what they did was that they went to a seminary school, an area where, all of the students you would assume are there because they want to do good in the world and to help people. Right. And so they picked a tough population for this study, tough, and you'll see why in a minute. But a caring, kind population of people. They were seminary students. And so the study divided them into different groups. And one group, they all had, and all of the groups had to, they were asked to give a lecture on the Good Samaritan, the story of the Good Samaritan from the Bible. And so then they divided the groups, and one group, they were told, well, you have to give the lecture later today. So you have some time to prepare it, right? And the place you'll need to give the lecture is across campus. It will take you a while to walk there, but you have plenty of time to walk there and to prepare the lecture. Yeah. The other group was told, you have to give this lecture. It's a surprise, I know, and you're already late. So like if you leave right now, you will be late when you get there, and people will be waiting for you to set up and give your lecture. Okay, so you see, like they artificially manipulated time pressure, right? And then here's the tricky part: for every person who left and got the instruction, there was an experimenter, Confederate, one of the experimenters, who was in the line of travel between, you know, where they started and where they were going, right? And the person was carrying a bunch of books. And when the seminary student approached, the person fell and acted like they fell, but they actually fell and dropped their books and dropped their things everywhere, right? And they were really distressed over it. And the question is, does the seminary student stop and help or not, right? And so good people wanting to help folks, they're predisposed to helping. You'd think that a very high percentage of them, maybe all of them, would stop. But it didn't turn out that way. It turned out that the students who were told that they were giving the lecture later in the day, only 63% of them helped. So a full, 39% didn't help, right? Chose to just walk by a person in need on the way to a lecture that they had to give later in the day, and they had enough time. But it got way worse with the group that was already late. Only 10% of them helped. So only 10% of them stopped to help. And so, this has been studied in various ways, and like a kind of an outcropping of this is called the bystander effect. And that is when you see something going wrong, but you don't help someone, maybe because you assume other people will help that person. Yeah. So it's well known that this happens. In fact, I just saw a study that was published. The press release came out this morning that even rats engage in the bystander effect. So it's not only a human effect; it's a thing that organisms do. But back to time, I think that time pressure makes us. This study suggests that time pressure makes us less likely to help other people, less likely to connect. We'll see that that's one of the keys to happiness, is connecting with other people. And at work, it actually also makes us make poor decisions. Yeah, we'll tend to do, when we're under time pressure, we'll tend to do quicker and easier things rather than acting in our future interests, which is a lot of what leadership is about. So most of us feel like there's not enough time in the day. But oddly, when you look at it objectively, objective studies of time, we have way more time now than we've ever had. And yet we feel like we have less. And so there's a thing called time affluence and time poverty, or time famine. And time affluence is the feeling that you have sufficient time to pursue the activities that are meaningful to you, to reflect, to engage in leisure, to do your work, to do things that don't, you're not super under pressure. Time famine, or time poverty, is the feeling that you're constantly stressed, constantly rushed, constantly overworked, constantly behind. And I'm not going to ask you guys to chat, but like, how many of you have that feeling on occasion? Many of us have it all the time, right? In fact, recent surveys found that 2.5 million Americans that were surveyed found that 80% of them didn't have the time to do everything they needed to do each day. And that's what they say. And there's a great Harvard Business Review article on this topic and time at work. I'm going to copy it and put it into the chat for you guys.
So just while you're doing that, John, I can totally relate on especially when it comes to trying to create new habits and new practices and new routines, but also just doing the things that are good for you, whether that's spending time with your family, whether it's stuff for yourself, whether it's doing a bit of exercise or meditation, which we'll talk about later. Yeah. When you're too busy, these things are the first to go. we give our time easier to other people, it seems, but not even necessarily in a nice way, to other things that are less beneficial to us, to ourselves. We're maybe not as strict in keeping hold of the time for us as we should be, I think.
Yeah, excellent point. So here's just, let's get to something practical here. So something you could do is hire out things that are low preference items for you. Like if you hate doing the lawn, then pay someone to do it. In fact, there's some research on this too, and there's a pretty famous study, and we'll post the link to it from like a Washington Post article. But pretty famous study gave people $40, and some of them were asked to spend the $40 on a material object, and others were asked to spend the $40 on time savings. So like something like buying back some of your time by hiring out a task. The thing is, people were far happier with the time savings, spending the money on time savings. And yet, in a separate survey, when you ask people, you know, how likely are you, if you had $40, how likely are you to buy back some of your time with it? Only 2% say yes. And even if you're a millionaire, less than half of millionaires say yes to that, right? They would rather save the money and be less happy. I mean, it's not a conscious decision, right? We don't even realize it's happening to us, but rather save the money and be less happy than hiring it out. So like, this is a very well documented phenomenon where, you know, you're not likely to do it, but if you write it down and you be strategic about it, you probably could find some things that you could hire off, and it will make you happier.
Yeah, and you've got to be careful though that you don't then fill that hole with something that is going to equally make you as unhappy. You know, there's also plenty of examples, and research shows that we are great at using tasks as a distraction and to keep us away from even thinking about ourselves, because we're not happy with our own company. So that you know, that's another part of the positive psychology research as well. But if you're filling your day with tasks and that is superficially giving you most happiness but happens through distraction, then that also is not a good thing. So if you do hire in someone to do the lawn, then please do substitute it with some of the behaviors that we're going to tell you about next, I would suggest.
Yes. So if I can add one more thing here that I love from Dr. Laurie Santos in the Happiness Lab, I picked this up from her. You know, she talks about the time that we have as time confetti. So like a lot of times we'll get like a 15-minute break in between meetings, or 30 minutes or something like that. And what we often do is the quickest and easiest thing, which is pick up our phone and look at the news or social media or scroll or something like that, right? Or try to answer email real quick, or you know, that sort of thing. But she suggests starting a time windfall list. Where like, you know, what are some things that actually some of the things that we're going to mention here, you know, you could put those on the list. And even if you got 5 minutes where you sent a kind message to a colleague or to a family member or a friend, or called your mom or something like that, rather than looking on Facebook, it's going to feel like time much better spent. Take a walk, meditate, whatever it is. You know, but I think it's a matter of creating an environment for yourself where you're more likely to do that than to you know, get on the Facebook and Twitter and stuff. So, back over to you, Bob.
Okay, good stuff. Thanks, John. Moving on, because we've not got a lot more time. Meditation and mindfulness is what we're going to talk about next. And I mean, okay, two things that I was not maybe that comfortable with a couple of years ago. Meditation, not that practiced in a couple of years ago, a fair bit practiced in now. Mindfulness, a word that's often used for a number of things, but probably not in the same context that we're going to talk about it today. Well, just before we get into that, with a quick quote from this chap again, which I really liked when I found it. If you can afford the brain cycles to worry about the future, then by definition you have nothing to worry about right now. Right now you are okay. So that's again from the chap who wrote the Solve for Happy book. But So this meditation and mindfulness, and it's mindfulness meditation that I would support that you pursue in to help you with your happiness. And a lot of this is also linked to time and being in flow and being present in the moment. And the research shows that if we can be present in the moment and less in the future and less in the past, then we are more likely to be happy. And one of the reasons we're more likely to be happy is because another way to think about happiness, and again, this comes from Mo Gawdat, is think about happiness as the absence of unhappiness. Okay, so happiness doesn't necessarily, and this helps differently with to the question about what's the difference between excitement and happiness. I would say that happiness is more of a default state that actually we're all capable of. That if most of the time we are okay, most of the time we are not in a horrendous situation. There's even a famous paper or book or story about the burning man, who was a monk that was so well trained in meditation that he actually was able to, it's a horrendous story, set himself on fire and be totally okay with it, because he was able to just see everything as it just appearing in consciousness. So the link between meditation, mindfulness meditation, is practicing being okay with the present and not trying. Actually, there's a few misnomers about this as well. You're not trying to suppress thoughts. You're not trying to suppress things coming in and out. What you're actually doing is practicing being a witness. And this I found very helpful, actually, was this idea that you're a witness to the things that are arising in you. And so I went through a not so great period. I lost my brother actually to suicide, and that sent me in a cascade of various things, to which I then came back up the side and to where I am quite now, which is pretty good space. But I had to do a lot of work. But when I was going through some therapy with this amazing, she wasn't a therapist, she was like a teacher, if you like, a guru, and she would refer to this as witness. What are you witnessing? Where in your body do you feel this? And also the point of, you are not your feelings. You have feelings, you are not your feelings. You have emotions, you are not your emotions. If you can see your emotions, if you can witness your emotions, then by virtue that you can witness them, you are not them. As in, you can see them arising, and therefore that they are not you. They are things that are happening within you. This doesn't click straight away, but with a lot of practice and going through this, you can gradually switch to a more witnessing state of being on a day-to-day basis. However, this also means that you have to, in some cases, not only give up the attachment to the emotion of feeling bad, but the attachment to the emotion of feeling good. Okay, so because both are just different states at the time, actually, if you get down to it, borne out by chemicals and various other things, and being able to be in this mindful state of witness to these events that are arising, and then moving it from a state out of the meditation practice into then real life. So the idea is that you practice identification with these parts of your body and emotions and thoughts, but then you do it to a stage where you can then do it in your day-to-day stuff as well and witness things. You do become remarkably calmer, more curious about life, being able to see things in the present moment easier. And you notice also, though, when you don't do it. So when you have too much, when you're too busy and you don't have time to meditate, then you notice this slight dip as well, or I do anyway. So the mindfulness linked to meditation, the mindfulness bit is being mindful of these things that are happening to you. And so much of our life is lived on automatic. And in fact, there's other research out there that shows that one of the reasons why we can't get people to do things just by asking them is because actually our conscious part of our brain isn't the thing that's in control anyway. It's all our subconscious parts, and our conscious part actually reconciles what we do after the event and it gives us the illusion of control. And meditation and mindfulness is also a practice of recognizing that and being okay with that to a certain extent, and then arranging the environment before you get there to manipulate your subconscious to do it more of the stuff you want it to do, if you like. I found this sketch when I was looking for some stuff.
For you real quick.
Okay, go.
You talked a lot about meditation. It's a practice. Yeah, it's a kind of a long-term, ideally it's a long-term thing. It's a skill that's difficult for many. But there are some really good apps out there that you can get started at, and we can tell you some more advanced practices as well if you'd like. But I just was curious if what are your favorite apps on in terms of the meditation?
Yeah, it's mine is the Sam Harris Waking Up app, of which I've got a snippet for later on. And actually, if anybody's interested in that, anybody who's got it can give you a free month into it as well. So all I need is your email address and stuff. So if you want a free month to trial that, then just email. But yeah, the Waking Up app by Sam Harris. I've tried Buddhify as well. Find that quite good just to start off with. Sam Harris is much more linked to neuroscience and the scientific study of meditation. So for the more, if you like, logical kind of person, like engineering type person that I am, I find that more helpful than the full on kind of bowl chiming meditation type stuff. What about you, John? Do you reckon the headspace there?
Yeah, I like the headspace. It's super simple. It doesn't. I mean, it teaches you what you need to know in order to have a practice. But once you get into it, and if you're a longer term meditator, I did a 10-day meditation retreat that was a silent retreat that was life changing. And so I'm happy to share some resources on that if any of you guys are interested in it. It's not for the faint of heart. It's a wild journey for 10 days. In my mind, at least it was. And others are sharing lots of other of their opinions and experiences in the chat. So make sure you're taking a look at that.
There's a couple of questions in there as well, John. Yeah. So question from Paul. Are all emotions are illusory in that we create them in our minds? I guess yes, to a certain extent, and that the mind has to receive them. For me, the way I've read it is emotions are very much part of the older part of our brain, and they are very reactive. So things cause them, if you like. But that means we can also then cause emotions as well. They're real in that they're real because they're created in our minds, and what in our minds is real to us. But are they factual, as in are they exact? I would argue no. As in we should pay attention to them and not dismiss them, but they are not that you should. I don't believe you should allow them to control you. You pay attention to them, listen to them, and then you can choose to act or not act upon them. Another question there. Sorry, Angie, John. Yeah.
So Angie asked, I'm curious what you think about ACT, and as it's more prevalent lately in our field. And she's referring to, if you're not familiar with it, it's called acceptance and commitment therapy. And I'm a huge fan of it. I think it's fantastic. And now there are a couple of online courses that are reasonably priced that Steve Hayes, one of the kind of creators of ACT, is offering. And Bob and I actually have talked about taking them together, but we haven't gotten to that yet. But I'm happy to supply you guys with a link, or you can Google it, Steve Hayes and ACT. And there are a number of books. Who is it? Dan Harris, I think, is a writer who has kind of an ACT approach on happiness. And he's got a book I'm looking at on my bookshelf right now called The Happiness Trap. That's a good one with that approach. But, it's back to Bob's point that, one of the fundamental concepts in ACT is that we are not our thoughts. and it's kind of giving you an awareness and a separation from what you're thinking. Because I think, without considering that, we go through our lives thinking we have a thought and it's real, it's a thing, and it's fear or it's panic. But what ACT and I think meditation to a larger extent teaches you is that you can observe those things. They're just impulses. They're electrical impulses.
Yep.
And
there's a great point
across your mind.
There, John, from Danny. So we have to pay attention when Danny puts something in there. Their emotions are also very much in the body, and totally. And they also have a massively, so the stressful emotions have a massively detrimental effect on our body if we don't allow them to pass through, as it were. So if we hold on to them, if we suppress them, they manifest themselves. And there's so much emerging research that shows how detrimental they can be to our health. Everything that's from stress related illnesses to way up there to the cancers as well that can be held. So there's some great books actually that Danny's been reading. The Body Keeps the Score is one of them that's highly recommended in many places as well, if you're interested in how to and I guess how damaging they can be and how to let go of them as well. But certainly recognizing them and paying attention is key in there. Right, moving on, because time again. Gratitude and giving. Sorry, just Hannah there as well said, here's an endorsement for the Sam Harris app and linking on to gratitude. So I did give her a free month, hoping that she would take it up, and she did. And that's great to hear, Hannah, that you're finding it of use. Can't recommend Sam Harris enough. There is a paywall after a month, but if you're in a place where you've been recently laid off or struggling and you email him, he will give you a free year and then you review it in a year. So that's pretty cool. So, I mean, look at that. Laurie Santos. I mean, how could you not be happy? That's Dr. Laurie Santos. She has the most downloaded or subscribed course in the world on run for Yale, the Science of Wellbeing, run on Yale's online course. So if you're interested in this, finding out more, subscribe to her course. It's completely free and definitely worth a look. But our minds lie to us all the time. We miswant things. We think we need to change our life circumstances to become happier. And this is the link to this gratitude and giving, and the misnomer that we think that if we buy stuff, for ourselves, those kind of things, if we chase material wants, that we'll be happier. And actually, the research shows that it most probably won't be the case. And that if we spent that money on other people, we would be far happier. And so the giving element and the gratitude element, again, counterintuitive, but the research shows that when we do these behaviors of giving to others, and it doesn't have to be money, it can be time, it can be help, it can be volunteering, that they're beneficial for our happiness, as well as obviously benefiting the person that we're giving them to. Now, John, as one of the gratitude presents he gave me for coming across to America to speak at one of his conferences, he didn't need to give me anything because I just love going across there, but he gave me a gratitude journal. And it's a book, but it's got these, there it is, right? Exact one. And the idea is that
the exact one. This is mine.
Yes, that's yours. You fill it in and you say every day 3 things that you're grateful for, as well as a couple other bits, but it's really simple. It sounds like too simple to be true. Saying 3 things you're grateful for every day, bringing these to mind and remembering, and it sounds like, well, a bit like, well, what's the point? But it actually works, and it's been proven to work a number of times and very successful. A really, really simple habit of bringing things to mind that you're grateful for. And the book, you don't have to fill in the book every, as in you don't have to continue filling the book. The point is to become into the habit. And then as you're going through your day, to bring to mind things that you're grateful for. So you could be grateful for that you've just had a really nice cup of coffee, or that you've listened to a great podcast, or that it's not raining, or that it is raining. And it's the active practice of present gratitude, if you like, or bringing to mind stuff that you're happy with, or grateful for. So and John, I'll pass over to you. I know you got something to say about this.
Yeah, just real quick, because we're kind of short on time. I just get geeked out about the studies. So, there was a study, one study, people who wrote down what they were grateful for every day for 6 weeks were happier and less depressed for 6 months, according to their reports. They slept better, and they were more likely to engage in healthy behaviors and exercise. So, I don't know, are they twice as likely? I'm not sure. But those are all, pretty good payoffs for a very short, a small amount of, effort.
Yeah. There's a question there from Mick Day. Is happiness erratic? You can be happy by being in one place at one time, and unhappy by being in another place a short time after, as in going shopping to a busy shopping mall. I guess that's the unhappy one. And then being at home, having a beer, I guess that's the happy one. Well, do you know what, Mick? Again, it is actually the story we tell ourselves about those things. Unless you're actually being stabbed in the eye while you're going shopping, you could actually turn it into a curious, happy moment. And likewise with the beer, you could turn that into a curious, unhappy moment if you really wanted to. So the benefit of, seriously, I'm definitely advocating, massive advocate of mindfulness and meditation, and seeing in those moments that might normally frustrate you, the curiousness about what you're seeing in front of you, and so some people might refer to that as people watching in a mall or whatever. You might start just wondering with the backgrounds of these people, what they might be buying, these kind of things. Really, the construct of the frustration that you feel is a complete construct that you are creating in your head. Therefore, you are able to create the opposite of that, which would be absolute joy at shopping.
Yep. Hey, Bob,
okay.
Move on,
yes.
This is one of the most important ones here.
It is one of the most important ones. And this one is very interesting. So connection. This comes up time and time again. And so connection or lack of connection can be obviously really lonely for a start. And research shows that lack of connection actually can predict mortality. So it can lessen your lifespan. And the opposite, it can give you greater lifespan if you have lots of connection in your life. So we're talking about social connection here. And that we're talking about, why? Well, we're social creatures. We evolved to be in groups. Being in groups was safer. If we got on with people, we had the safety of group, the power of the group. If we didn't get on with people, we would be chucked out of the group, and that meant it was harder to survive. So those that were more sociable passed on their genes because they got to procreate, and so the propensity for socialness, if you like, got passed on and to us in a concentrated form, if you like. So social connection is good for us, and the problem nowadays, though, is very quickly we've got this old type programming that was used to living in big communities and tribes. Well, big, they reckon up to maybe 150 is optimal. But now we're in these silos of homes, our homes of very small units, especially over the lockdown and COVID areas, times where the connections are easy to be lost. And then when you add this to the time factor, to social media addictions and this kind of thing, we're lacking in a lot of cases this human connection. And it's easy to give up in the way that life is structured today as well. I'm not the best. There's often in the office complex that I'm in, there'll be a social lunch, and I often miss it. And sometimes purposefully. But if I go, I'm usually quite buzzing afterwards. So it's like this weird paradox of my intention and my knowledge about what happens are different. So I might think I don't want to go, but then I go and I actually experience something different.
Yep. Tons of studies show that spending time with friends and family produces more happiness, of any duration, but generally longer durations work even better. Can I just add one thing here? There's a cool study that I want to put into the chat here in a minute. It's a 75-year longitudinal project trying to figure out kind of what makes us the most happy. And basically, the director of the study said, happiness is love, full stop. And so, like, again and again, what they find is that it's not things, it's not experiences even, but it's our connections with other people that makes us the happiest. And so really pretty convincing data across generations to suggest, to some support for what Bob's saying here.
Yeah, it's pretty compelling. But connection goes deeper than just the social connection. There's also, one ahead, connection to ourself as well. You can fake a lot of this that we're talking about in here, and it is fake unless you have this kind of connection to yourself. And so when they talk about connections, very much you can still be alone and be completely connected. You can be alone and be completely lonely, or you can be alone and be completely connected. So it's connection to yourself, and it's connection to nature, and being comfortable with your own company. And that is, that concept was not even, I was not even mindful of that, I guess, in my earlier years. When I talk about earlier years, I'm talking about maybe 5 years ago, until I've got, and a lot of this I've got to my wife to thank for. She's studied a lot of connection stuff in her life, and really did push me to be more connected. And I think this is a generalized statement, but I think men are very task focused and don't check in as much to themselves perhaps as we maybe should, and aren't as connected to maybe our bodies and feelings and thoughts as we maybe should. And this isn't even about the talking about them or sharing them. This is about actually being connected ourselves with how we're feeling, with what we're feeling. Even the word feeling, like, how do you feel? Well, actually, if we asked, what do you feel, might be a better start. Like, what do you feel and where do you feel it actually in your body would start to create a better connection between mind and body. And so just wanted to put that in as well. It's not just this social connection, but it's also connection to ourselves and connection to nature. Happiness at work, John.
Yeah, so research back in the 80s, or since the 80s, I guess, has shown that people tend to take one of three orientations toward their work. They either think of it as a job, a career, or a calling. And I won't go into great detail on these because I think you can imagine what each means. But what we've found is that the way that the work is created and arranged causes people to think about it in the ways that they think about it, right? So partly it's, there are really two perspectives, and Barry Schwartz is kind of listed on this, this slide. Yes, we're kind of over this is actually, his name isn't on here yet, but these are the elements that a guy named Barry Schwartz has recommended, and he's speaking to people who are creating the work environment. So, like, the environment drives part of that, that thinking among people, but also what people make of the work. There's some research on that, and that drives part of it as well. So, like, from Barry Schwartz's perspective, if you create work with that has meaning, that allows for engagement or encourages engagement, that allows for some autonomy and choice, that gives the person some control over what they're doing. And, he even talks about allowing people to be creative about how they get the job done, as long as it's safe and properly done. And then a work that provides some challenge. And, if you look into some of his work, he's got a really good TED Talk, which I can share with you. I think it was like from 2014 or so. Like, basically the point was the way that we think of work is really screwed up. It's not called that. It's much more eloquent. But we think the way we think about work is wrong. And his point is that, from the early days of manufacturing, and the organization of work, we've organized it to keep it really simple, to make the job as simple as possible, and give.
Oh, John, John's gone. John's gone for me. Has he gone for you? Yes, I think he has. Okay, hopefully John will be back with us in a moment, and we can check about what he's going to be talking about the work. Okay. Yep, lost John. Right, moving on. Maybe he's had to go to another meeting that bang on the kind of time. Right, let's talk about practicing, right? The final kind of most important bit that I wanted to talk about here. There's various things that can help you practice this. Now, and it is a practice. So all of this stuff, right? Please read up on a lot of the things that we've mentioned here. Loads of links. This has been the most links we've kind of put in the chat. These will also be on a resource sheet as well, but they're pointless if you don't actually continue to do them. A person that's on the chat here, Paul Lambie, who's been posting some great stuff here as well, really got me into tracking the behaviors that we do, and actually was the one that got me into meditation as well. There's various. Hi, John.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. There's various always best to do this with two. There's various meditation apps that we've already mentioned as well. Honestly, you can email me and I'll give you, then plug your email in to the whatever it is to give you a month's free on the Waking Up app. I found that really helpful. You might even be able to get it yourself for a month free. But books, there's tons of books. We've got a reading list on the happiness stuff as well. Audible, if you haven't got Audible or audiobooks yet, I mean, just like that's a great way of actually enjoying gardening or cleaning the house while listening to a book as well. Some really forward technology, a journal and a pen. Like, man, just grab a pen and a piece of paper and write down 3 things that you're happy for every day. But do you know what? That's probably the simplest thing here, but you're unlikely to do it, right? You're unlikely to do it because you don't do it at the minute. So how would you make it more likely that you were to do it? Well, you have to get a pen and a journal and maybe set the timer, right? In your phone, set the alarm, journaling, like 5 minutes journaling, and then create that habit. There's friends, right? So you could form a consequence kind of accountability circle with some of your mates and say, look, I want to journal, like, or I'm going to meditate. Do you want to do it with me? Or can I use you as an accountability kind of friend sort of thing? But also for the connections, we talked about that before as well. There's habit apps. There's apps that help you track your habits as well. And key to habits is routine, having a good routine every day that you can stick to and building those into a routine, and the association then with certain things like, okay, whenever I make a coffee, I'll now do my journaling. Or, so if there's things there already, then attaching that new behavior to that thing that's there already. So that's the Waking Up app. John, just switch your thing off there a minute. Just so people can see my stats, because I'm dead proud of this, right? That's my stats for the Waking Up app. 35 days was the longest streak, 156 total sessions since 2018. So I was very slow start, but then really sped up on this. And now I think on this next one, this is my habit tracking app. All right, so I've already done meditation today, so it's not on there. But I think my meditation for this 10-minute meditations are up something like 90 days in this year so far, which is making a massive difference. So I'm a bit of a geek when it comes to tracking behaviors and stuff. This is called Productive, this app as well. I think it does cost once you're past the initial period, but not much compared to what it gives you. You can come back now, John, if you want. But that's, I think, is the most important point, is working at how you build these into your daily events and making them a practice. John, anything to say?
Yeah, I have a question for everyone. We talked about 100 things in the last hour. Do you have, did you learn anything, or were you reminded of anything, at least one thing? And if so, it would be great feedback to us if you could chat something that occurred to you during this session, or something that perhaps you learned, perhaps something you didn't know. If you would be kind enough to give us a little bit of feedback, we'd know kind of the things that landed better than others potentially. So that would be great to see. And then the last thing is, I would encourage you to think of one thing that we talked about and try to do that if you're able to. Like, right, so if you try 10 things, it's not going to work. But if you can find one thing that you'd like to do better today, tomorrow, maybe this week, you get that happening, and then you can pick one more thing, and so gradually that's how we build habits. We don't do them 10 at a time. It's just not an effective way to do it. So that'd be my advice for everyone. Find it, start trying to do it, shape that behavior up in your own kind of habits and your daily routine. And then you can add another one once you've got that one handled.
Yeah, it is a gradual process for sure. It's a gradual, for me, it's been a gradual shaping of my mind, but that shaping of my mind has been through then the behaviors that I've done. So through things that I've read, and then through the practices that I've embarked on, if you like, which is 10 minutes a day of meditation. Make sure there's a bit of daily exercise routine in there as well. The mindfulness, telling myself that actually, and like when there is stuff that winds me up, which there is stuff that winds me up, it's definitely not. I'm not like plateau all the time, especially around like the kids. Hannah, you've stopped winding me up as much, but it's working out even in yourself. That's an opportunity to reflect on what is it that's going on just now that's really annoying you, because that annoying you is all you. Yeah, unless they're actually physically chopping off your limbs, there's nothing actually probably wrong in that moment of your life other than everything you're imagining. Yeah, and or it's a challenge of your of my wanting to control the situation. So any anxiety that I was feeling, any frustrations that I was feeling, are completely manufactured by me, and that in itself is massively curious, and interesting. And then seeing it from that point of view, and still, there's elevated levels of cortisol and like adrenaline, and you can feel the heart's pumping out your chest sometimes, and it's just going, wow, well, that's definitely just having some effect here. I'll move into another room and let these chemicals subside before I take my next course of action, rather than actually jumping down the throat of someone I love. So that's massively important as well. Some great stuff coming in there, John.
Yeah, fantastic. I chatted my enjoyment of reading them. So fantastic. Really appreciate your inputs, everyone.
Yeah, this has probably been, I think, one of the most fun ones I've had research in this, of the ones we've done. When you start looking for, there's little snippets of happiness tips all over the place, actually. And I don't know whether it's one of those, confirmation bias things that happens to us, but certainly the stories you then hear, or the things that you then feel, guaranteed from what you've heard today, you'll start to then see other elements that we've mentioned here in other areas of your life, I think. Absolutely. Yeah, it's all a journey. Try and test different strategies. Yep. As long as it's not try and test different husbands, Danielle.
That's great. Maybe we should wrap up, or did you already do the wrap up slides?
Hey, no, I've not done the wrap up slides. Let me get back to those. As always, you can contact myself and John on those things there, right? You've got our details anyway. You've got our email addresses by now, surely. If you're not connected on LinkedIn, please connect on LinkedIn. There's some great stuff we share on there as well. We have got all your email addresses, so we will be sending you the resource sheet for this. And look, if there's anything that you want clarification on, then just ping us a reply, or later on, ping us another email with a question. The link that you got with your access to this session is actually also the same link that you can see a replay of the whole thing, including all the questions. But we will be uploading the video to Vimeo or YouTube, and you'll be able to get a link to that as well. But that won't actually have the questions as such on it there. But your link will have the questions. But we'll post all that out to you as well. John?
I'm really grateful that you guys all came and joined us. I do appreciate it. It's great to have an audience to talk about this with, and to remind ourselves to practice this. It's part of it. It's just like anything. Part of it, I feel like an imposter. It's like, I'm not always happy. What right do I have to talk about happiness? But you know what? Talking about it and learning about it makes me happier, and it makes me more likely to practice some of the behaviors. So thank you guys for being a part of that for me as well.
Yeah, definitely likewise. And yeah, that's the biggest thing is this is not about chasing a dream, chasing a goal. This is about understanding that actually, do you know what? All of you guys on there just now, you're pretty all right. You're all right. At this moment in time, you're all actually a 5.
Yeah, exactly.
Unless you are actually getting your limbs chopped off, right? Which is then like, that's not good.
Not good, not good.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks very much. And we'll see you for whatever's next.
Thanks, everyone.